So, with this module, our story of the English language arrives in America. And I believe this will be the most interesting part of the history because we can directly connect ourselves to it. In this video, I'll be quick to narrate the origin, settlement, and expansion of the English language on American soil. We know Britain remained the most powerful country in the world for several hundred years, colonizing a vast swath of land on Earth, extending from North America to Africa, Asia, and as far as Australia and New Zealand. The history of America is interesting because British people were not the first to arrive here. Columbus, the famous Italian explorer, set his foot here as the first man from Europe, and that began the process of colonization of America. British people began to pour into America in the 16th century. They displaced the native population and established a colony under the British king. In 1776, America became an independent republic country, not anymore under British rule. By the time the English language was already established as the national identity and the core of the American civilization. Today, the United States has the largest English speaking population of the world. The current population of the United States is 331.9 million based on the census of 2021. About 241 million people speak English as their mother tongue and are monolingual in the United States. The rest of the people can be called bilingual as they speak their own mother tongue in their family, the language that comes from their parents, who are mostly immediate immigrants from other countries. There are more than 350 languages spoken in the United States because it is a country made up of immigrants. People from all over the world have immigrated to the United States. According to the census, 12.6 people speak Spanish in their families and are bilingual. Other languages that follow are Chinese, Vietnamese, Arabic, etc. They speak English as their second language in America because English is the language of education, employment, government, business, and medium of communication among people outside their families and close communities. Spanish is the language of the countries in the Caribbean islands, Mexico, Central America, and the rest of South America, except Brazil. People in Brazil speak Portuguese. The spread of Portuguese and Spanish in Mexico, the Caribbean, and Latin America coincides with the spread and growth of English in North America. The settlement of the British people in America happened in several phases. We can study them in 6 phases or categories. Jamestown, Virginia is regarded to be the first and earliest settlement of the British people in America. The year was 1607. More than 90% of those settlers were from the British Isles. They began living in the east of the Appalachian Mountains, and by the year 1790, their population was about 4 million. So rapid was their growth. Interestingly, the English language originally brought by the British people did not stay the same. It changed over time with the spelling, pronunciation, and vocabulary somewhat different from the British people, and that came to be known as American English. The second period of settlement covers the expansion of the original 13 colonies west of the Appalachians, at first into the south and into the Old North Territory, ending finally in the Pacific. This phase was marked by the arrival of fresh immigrants, mainly from Ireland and Germany. In the first 2 phases, which occurred before the Civil War of 1890, about 75 to 90% of immigrants came from the British Isles and Northern Europe. The third phase occurred after the Civil War that saw a great number of people from Southern Europe and Slavic countries with a speed of more than a million every year poured in. The history of the settlement of African Americans is a totally different one. They did not come to America at their own will. They were transported to America as slaves by the infamous transatlantic slave trade. The slave trade that was institutionalized by government support began somewhere in the mid 16th century and continued until the 19th century. This settlement can be placed in a different category due to the way African people were brought and brutalized here in America, and later, only after centuries of long struggles, were given the status of free citizens. It is the most barbaric and darkest history of the American soil. The African American population is mostly concentrated in the southeast of the United States, where they were first brought from Africa to work in the plantations. There has also been a continuous influx of other nationalities pouring into the United States, from Mexico, Central America, the Caribbean islands, and Asia, which has changed the demography as well as the linguistic makeup. America is regarded as the melting pot, a free country where languages and cultures merge and live in harmony. Despite the influx of people from non-English countries, American English is spoken by the first settlers who were of British origin has remained the mainstream American English. The settlement of the 13 colonies along the Atlantic seaboard covered a long, narrow strip of land expanding from Maine to Georgia. This area is divided into three sections: New England, the Mid Atlantic states, and the South Atlantic states. The earliest New England settlements started in Massachusetts Bay. Between 1620 and 1640, some 200 vessels came from England to New England, bringing upward of 15,000 immigrants. By the latter, this number had grown to about 25,000 inhabitants. The majority of settlers came first to Massachusetts, but in a very few years, groups in search of cheaper land or greater freedom began to push up and down the coast and establish new communities. Connecticut and the coasts of Maine and Rhode Island were quickly occupied. New Hampshire was settled more slowly because of the greater resistance by the Native Americans. New York City had a rather cosmopolitan population of merchants and traders. New Jersey was mostly wholly English. The eastern part was an offshoot of New England, but on the Delaware River there was a colony of Quakers direct from England. Pennsylvania had a mixed population of English Quakers, some Welsh and some Scots Irish and Germans. The most prominent characteristic of the occupation of the United States is the constant mingling of settlers who came from different countries and they all spoke the same American English. This promoted their national and cultural identity, which set a strong foundation of Americanness. As the English language is famous for borrowing from other languages and expanding its vocabulary strength, so did happen. The English language prospered and flourished in the form of American English in America. American English did not shy away from borrowing from whichever language or geographical culture it came from. A whole series of new words entered the American vocabulary list that were borrowed not only from Native American languages but also from other European languages where they lived together under the same national and linguistic identity. Now let's look at some of the vocabulary that came from Native Americans. Moose, raccoon, skunk, opossum, chipmunk, porgy, terrapin, mud hen, garter snake, bullfrog, potato bug, groundhog, sweet potato, eggplant, squash, persimmon, pecan, wigwam, tomahawk, canoe, toboggan, mekana, moccasin, wampum, etc. In our next video, we will explore the vocabulary that came from the European languages when the people from different parts of Europe intermingled in the American soil.